It is without a doubt that streaming has taken over the entertainment industry. Last year, in 2016, 51% of all the music industry's revenue came from streaming services. We also have the success of movie and TV show streaming services like Hulu and Netflix. Because of how popular these services have become, we see more and more consumers cutting the cord and ditching cable in favor of these streaming services. So, with more people streaming their music and streaming their movies as opposed to getting physical copies or downloading, many people have predicted that the same thing is going to eventually happen to video games and the gaming industry. With many prominent figures in the gaming industry, like Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot, saying that there's only one console generation left, and after that, streaming is going to absolutely take over and will make console and PC gaming as we know it obsolete. But I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with the people who think that. And here's why. Well, for starters, there's no evidence whatsoever that indicates that streaming is going to take over the gaming industry. None whatsoever. Video game streaming has been around for at least a decade, but is yet to take up a significant market share of the industry. So at least when it comes to the game industry, there's no evidence, there's no data that indicates that streaming is taking over. They're getting this from what's been going on in other industries, which I think is stupid because the gaming industry is so much different from the music industry and the movie industry. Video games are an interactive form of entertainment in which you can control your character and what goes on in the world that you're exploring. While music is just something that you listen to and movies are just something that you watch. All you have to do is make a quick YouTube search and you can listen to practically any song that you want to. And you can go on Netflix or whatever service that you need to find whatever movie that you want to and instantly stream it. But with video games, it's not so simple. It's not as simple as that. Video games are much more demanding on your bandwidth than if you're streaming a song or watching a movie via streaming. Even the best services right now have latency problems with single-player games. So imagine trying to stream an online game. I can't. It would be unplayable, and nobody would want to do that. Especially with so many gamers being competitive, you really think that competitive gaming is going to exist on a streaming service? It's not. It's not going to happen. So the idea that consoles are going to be phased out in favor of streaming services is absurd. Even if you ignore the fact that a significant portion of the population does not have access to high download speeds and can barely download their games, never mind stream their games. Also, I can't even count how many times I've been put in a multiplayer match against people with terrible internet connections. So if online gaming and digital downloads aren't available to everybody in 2017, when do you think streaming games will be available for everybody? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? When? Alright, so let's say in a few decades that the majority of the population in North America has access to high-speed internet that can do game streaming well with little latency. Well, what about gamers living in developing countries? Because then they'd be essentially if what Guillemot says about streaming becomes a reality. That game streaming will make consoles obsolete. If streaming was the dominant method of gaming, so many people would be alienated from gaming, and it wouldn't help the industry grow, it would hurt the industry. And the people who think that streaming is the future would be like, well, we'll get there one day, we'll get there eventually. I'm sorry, but if you think in a few decades, most of the world population is going to have access to high-speed internet capable of streaming games, then you're a fool. That's nothing but utopian nonsense. It's not going to happen. But let's say it does happen, somehow. Imagine being a content creator in this new gaming industry where streaming takes over. You're going to have to live stream games on Twitch or YouTube, whatever exists at the time, while at the same time streaming your games that you're playing and being in an online multiplayer match. Can you imagine how well your internet's going to handle that? I sure as hell can't. Okay, but let's say hypothetically there were no technological hurdles that needed to be resolved, right? It still would not make a difference because the whole system of streaming is basically incompatible with the gaming industry, with developers and publishers making a ton of money off of DLCs, microtransactions, and all this other bull. You really think they're going to give up all that revenue for streaming? Why on earth would they do that? that makes no financial sense whatsoever because they would be making considerably less money if streaming took over the gaming industry. Compare the money they would get from licensing their games to these streaming companies. Compare that to the money they are currently making from microtransactions, from DLCs, or just from selling their games standalone for $60. Just think about that for a second, because in order for streaming to take over, not only would it require high consumer demand, but it also requires the cooperation of these publishers. And they have absolutely no reason to change this system that we have right now. You look at the games on PlayStation Now, you look at its catalog of games, you would notice something. The majority of games available on PlayStation Now are old. Why is that? Because they can't make money off of these games anymore. These older games that have been out for years available on PlayStation Now. So they have no problem getting money from licensing the game to Sony to have it on the PlayStation Now service. That's why there are no new releases on PlayStation Now. There's some streaming services that have a different model from Sony. Instead of having a flat subscription fee, they offer new releases for full price available for streaming. Now, what's the problem with that? Do I need to explain that? Really? Okay. What happens when your internet goes out? What happens when the publisher pulls the game from the streaming service? Then the game that you spent so many hours playing, poof, gone forever. If a movie gets removed from Netflix, okay, it sucks, but you'll survive. But if your game that you've been streaming for hours and hours and hours and have so many hours playing and aren't finished with yet and still want to continue playing, it gets pulled from a streaming service like PlayStation Now or whatever other streaming service, then you're absolutely fucked. Especially if streaming takes over the industry like these people are predicting. Can you imagine what that would be like? Not knowing if you'll be able to play a certain game one day and then tomorrow it's gone forever. It just doesn't seem worth it. Not at all. Oh, you don't have to worry about having powerful hardware. You don't have to worry about buying a new system every generation. Okay, that's great. But now I have to worry about, oh, do I have a good internet connection? Do I have rights to the game? If I'm streaming the game, is it going to run like absolute dog shit? People think the industry's bad now. Imagine how it would be if streaming did take over the industry, if streaming killed consoles, if streaming killed PC gaming. I don't know. It just seems to me like a system that's bound to fail and have catastrophic effects on the industry. And I'll tell you guys this. If video game streaming is truly the future, then it's a future I will have no part of. I will quit gaming if this becomes a reality. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you guys later.